the truth is if you have the confidence to do that, the possibilities are going to be endless for you. And I've had the opportunity to go on shows or to do the book or to do all these different things because I put myself out there and I was willing to try and fail.
That was Chandice Probst, and this is episode number 190 of the Chopped Podcast. Hey there, how are you doing today? I am so glad you joined me. I'm Marley McMillan. I'm with the site Namely Marley. I am your host of the Chopped Podcast, where we are talking about all things food blogging. I mean, how can there be that much to talk about food blogging? I know, I ask myself that same question all the time. And it's actually kind of funny when I'm introducing myself to people and they ask me what I do and I tell them, and I see that look on their face like, food blogging sounds kind of easy. You just eat a lot or whatever. I don't know what they're thinking, but usually I explain it that I have an MBA and I come from a business background, and food blogging has been one of the most challenging things career-wise that I have ever done. Who knows? Maybe it's the challenge of it all that keeps us coming back for more. I think that's definitely true for me. Well, before we get started with today's amazing guest, I just want to tell you this. Did you know that this is a 5-star podcast? I'm so excited about that. Thank you so much for your iTunes reviews of the Chopped Podcast. It really makes a huge difference. And I wanted to share with you a featured listener today. Kristen is of the site thevegiechick.com, and she had this to say: I stumbled upon Marley's podcast about 6 months ago and have already binge listened to almost all of them. As a food blogger, it's incredibly refreshing to find such an informative, helpful, inspiring, and fun podcast. From the very first episode I listened to, I immediately connected with Marley's sweet and caring nature and the way she truly cares about each guest on the show and the listeners. You can just feel her energy and dedication to helping other food bloggers. I also really enjoy the variety of topics on the show, and I'm finding myself looking forward to when each new one comes out. But the best part, I'm finally seeing a lot of success with my blog, and I can truly say what I've learned on the Chop podcast has been a big part of this growth. Thank you. Thank you, Kristen. Your review is so kind, and I truly appreciate it. I can't tell you how happy it makes me just to learn that this podcast has played a part in your formula for success. I'm so excited and so happy that we can be here in community and learning from each other. And I always feel like there's so many tipping points along the career of a food blogger, so many opportunities for aha moments. And that's why I love sharing these interviews, because who knows what's that tipping point going to be for you? What is the one thing that someone's going to say that's going to cause your aha moment? I don't know. I find that very inspiring and it keeps me going. So thank you again, Kristen. I really appreciate your review. And by the way, I love your site name, vegiechick.com, and your site is beautiful. Hey, would you like to be a featured listener of a future episode? Head over to iTunes and leave a review today. Okay, on to today's show. Today I'm talking with Chandice Probst. She's of the site This Vivacious Life. As you can imagine, it's going to be an energetic, vivacious, and fun chat. Chandice and I talk about a lot of different things, but I'm particularly drawn to her encouragement on the topic of confidence. She uses confidence to do a lot of exciting things as a food blogger, and it's been a successful tool for her. It's encouraged her to write books. She even ran a business centered on gluten awareness and celiac disease. And this business had her hosting events with professional athletic teams from around the country. And her business even acquired Mark Cuban of the show Shark Tank as an investor and board member. Wow, that's huge. And that definitely sounds like to me like someone with a lot of confidence. Not all her projects have been successful, and we talk about that, but that's simply part of the journey for Chandice. And I love her honest discussion about what she's been through and, just the courage and the confidence that she's needed to move forward in that area. If you allow fear of failure to just run the show, you're never going to do anything. And sometimes it's through the failures that we learn so much anyway. So is there something percolating in the back of your mind, something you want to do, but you're nervous or afraid to try it? Maybe you want to publish a meal plan for your blog, or maybe you want to just hit publish on your very first post. Whatever it is, Chandice is here to remind you to have confidence in yourself and your dreams. You got this. So if you're looking for a dose of inspiration, you are going to love this inspiring chat. So let's get straight to it. Here's today's featured discussion with Chandice Probst. Hey everyone, I'm happy to have on the show today Chandice Probst. She's with the site This Vivacious Life. Welcome to the Chop Podcast, Chandice.
Thanks, Marley. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. I think we're going to talk about so many fun and really different kinds of things today. So it's going to be a good conversation for folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Got a lot to share.
Yes, woohoo, let's get started. So, I just love to start with this question, and that is, you've got this great site name, This Vivacious Life. It's wonderful. What was it that caused you to start your blog?
Yeah, so back in 2008, I think, I was diagnosed with celiac disease, both my mom and I within a month. And that was back when you have .blogspot.com. So I just went ahead and started one of those, and it was Gluten-Free Frenzy back then. And it was just, sharing some fun gluten-free things that I found or a recipe. And so when you'd get a comment, you'd be like, wow, someone from Michigan, it was back in the good old days of blogging. But I just decided to jump in, feet first with this gluten-free living. And in the past 3 years, I decided to make it a business. And at that point was when I switched to This Vivacious Life, because at that point I felt like I had kind of pigeonholed myself in a gluten-free only kind of topic, where I also love to share hostess tips and entertaining and parties. I style parties for brands and my family and friends. And so I still do recipes, and they're all gluten-free still, just because I have to eat gluten-free. But I also do a lot more fun things, holiday whimsy and entertaining as well.
Oh, that's interesting. I think that's so, it sounds to me like what happens is that you started your blog and then over time you began to realize like, hey, I could turn this into a business, but I need a new site name.
Absolutely. And not only a site name, but you can't really do anything with .blogspot.com. and so I had to switch over to WordPress. And I recently in February had a full site audit from Casey Markey of MediaWise. And that was eye-opening. 42 pages of stuff to fix on the back end of my site because of all the things that I had done wrong starting in 2009. But it was really good for me because it made me, I invested in my business. I said, this is a business and I'm going to figure out how to make it that. Because I was already doing work with brands and, making income, but he really fine-tuned it for me.
And when did you have that done?
I had that done in February, and my Google traffic is already up 20%.
Wow.
And then I have someone who helps me manage my Pinterest, Christy from Silently Social, and my Pinterest traffic from last year to this year is up over 200%. So,
wow, that's huge.
Yeah. I mean, I feel really strongly that for a long time I was running the hamster wheel and doing it all myself. And the thing is that I am not an SEO expert. I am not a Pinterest expert, and so hiring people to help you with those things it allowed me to get back into the creative seat and just really focus on food photography, recipe development, and writing, and let them do what they're good at.
I mean, that's a lot to be an expert of anyway, right?
It's when you do a blog, you kind of have to be, right? And I'm lucky that my husband is, his degree was from Princeton in computer science. So I'm pretty lucky that way that he's my quote web developer.
Yes.
So, but yeah, lots of great people, behind the scenes also making it happen.
Oh, that's true. I think the days of somebody being able to do this all on their own is I don't know if somebody's able to do that, that's just amazing. But I think for the most part, it's really helpful to have people that you can rely on. Even if you just hire them for one-off projects. I've had many like when I did my site review, I've come to find out we just had a homemade recipe card. It was great. I loved it. It was, because my husband built it. It was just perfect for me. However, it didn't keep up with all the things that were going on with Google. And so we had to transfer everything. And it was really like as if we didn't have a recipe card at all. So everything had to be manually transferred over to WP Recipe Maker. So I hired somebody to help me with that. And it was night and day. It was really nice.
It is. Absolutely. I know. And even just like you said, for those little projects, just recently, I did. So my mom and I authored our very first cookbook back in, goodness, I think it was like 2014, and it's called Gluten Free on a Budget, and it's on Amazon, on our website, and in Barnes and Noble. So that was fun, but that was a traditional, we went through a publishing house. That was really fun. But this year I did my first ebook, and I actually hired, Brittany from Brittany Long Curations to do that for me, because again, I am not an expert in designing a book. And so even just those little projects where you're like, I want to do an ebook, and luckily there's wonderful templates on Canva and things like that. But for me, I just needed someone to help me out with that. And she did great. And it's a beautiful ebook all about sheet pan meals. So,
Well, I also think too, like getting somebody to help you with the expertise of marketing a book online, because even if you did know how to design it, and even if you did know, if you felt confident with the writing and the editing and all that stuff, the getting it on Amazon and getting it done right, and knowing all the ins and out of selling a book, I think would be helpful to hire an expert to help with that too.
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we do, I came on just a few months after Tastemaker Conference was started by Abby Rodriguez, and we're business
Hmm.
partners on that now. And I know we had Jennifer, I'll have to look at her website to see what her website is, but she was actually a publisher or an editor for a publishing house in New York City. And she came and spoke to us about exactly that. She left the publishing house and now she does, projects with bloggers, specifically how to write their proposal, how to write their query letter, how to get their book picked up, and then from there, even what to do. And you're right, you need those people along the way, and they're the experts at it. So you know that they're going to help you do it right.
I feel like in some ways blogging is like, I got this list of people I would love, the projects and things that I want to do that I'm going to have, I'm going to hire. So I got this dream list of my dream team
Yeah.
one of these days.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's so smart. I think one of the biggest mistakes bloggers make, well, I'll put it in a positive way, is that the best thing you can do for yourself is you have to invest money to make money. And that was a
Yes.
huge thing too, when I paid for my site redesign and when you know what I mean? All of those things are
Yes.
money spent, but they come back to you
Mhm.
fourfold when it's a success. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I was just reading an article a couple of days ago about, it was an article about people in their careers. And what they said is that their biggest regret about their career was not following through on
Yeah.
passions. So I just kind of feel like, investing, even if it means hiring somebody to help you, is an example of how you need to follow through on your passion.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Some of the, I'm definitely a dreamer, clearly from the title of
Yes.
my blog, This Vivacious Life. And that's how my mom used to describe me when I was a little girl. She's very vivacious. And I still am. And so for me, the sky's the limit. And I've emailed producers of shows and been like, hey, let me pitch you why I should come on the show. And for me, I know that's a difficult thing for many, but the truth is if you have the confidence to do that, the possibilities are going to be endless for you. And I've had the opportunity to go on shows or to do the book or to do all these different things because I put myself out there and I was willing to try and fail.
See, I love that. Let's talk about that for just a second because I'm curious. Did you get rejections?
I did, yeah. So I put together our query letter for our book, and my cousin she got her degree in English literature, so she helped me just edit it. I put it together, and she helped me edit it a little bit. But I sent it out to a few publishing houses and was told no, and then eventually we got a yes, which that's kind of what happens with anything, right?
Yes.
And we got that yes, but their hesitation was, we need to know that it's going to sell. And I came back with a whole, list of how it's going to sell, why it's going to sell, all these things, sharing with them and convincing them of why. And that was the nail in the coffin that okay, this is meant to be. So it was really, really good that way. Same thing. We worked with Mark Cuban most people know him from Shark Tank or the Mavericks.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really
Yeah.
fun. My husband and I worked with him back in, it's probably been about 6 or 7 years. But again, it was something where I was doing a business gluten-free calendar at the time. And we were doing awareness nights, celiac awareness nights with professional athletic teams, baseball, MLB, NBA. It was really fun. And I talked to him about how I thought this was a great project to raise money for celiac disease awareness. And he came on and it was really fun. And it was a great experience to work with Mark and to see emails from him and his expertise. And it was wonderful.
Wow.
And did that business succeed? No, it didn't. In the long run, it did not. But I learned a lot from that business. And so I could move forward. And for a long time, you take your failures as, I just messed up. But most of the people who are successful mess up a lot. So,
Yes, I love
yeah.
that. What I love about that is because I think a lot of times we're so afraid of failing, and in reality, that's you just got to do it. You just like fail, 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 and that's when the thing that's really going to happen is going to come through.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, doing the gluten-free calendar, we got sponsors for our events and we worked with big national brands. And I did that a lot on my own, getting those brands. I mean, I definitely had a team who helped with so many other things that I couldn't have done it without. But working with those brands was kind of my responsibility. And even though that the longevity of that business didn't continue, it didn't last, it took me into going, now I'm in Tastemaker Conference, like I said, with Abby, and I'm the sponsor director over there. And we just had Tillamook as we finished our second year this last September,
Wow.
and they were our presenting title sponsor. We've worked with, I mean, so many national brands, wonderful brands. But if I hadn't tried and failed with that, I wouldn't have the confidence to now succeed with Tastemaker Conference in getting all these sponsors.
Right. And you have the experience. You can say, I've done these things that, it's a little bit like, I think sometimes with our resume, we might say like, people put their GPA in college and nobody even asks that question. But at
No.
the time, it's really important to you that, you have this really good GPA. So it sounds to me like the same thing. Nobody's going to ask, whether why that project isn't happening anymore. They're just going to see that you've got this experience working with brands. And how cool is that?
Oh, all the time. If I rarely share that, so that's
Yeah.
a special thing that I'm sharing with you, Marley. But I rarely share that just because I feel like it's got to be the right time and place. But
Right.
I've only the few times that I have shared it, I've only had support and, like you said, people seeing that, wow, how exciting that you got to do that. Who cares that the business
Yes.
didn't succeed? That's fine. You got all the experience and you got to work with somebody really great. I had a wonderful mentor. So.
Right. And I sometimes I think things have a season. Like, for example, I did a conference here for 3 years with Chopped. And I would say that each year was a success. I chose not to continue doing it, but it doesn't mean that to me, it was a failure. It's just that to me, it had reached its culmination and I was ready to move on. Actually, I think what happened is I started the podcast and I was ready to move on to the podcast more so than continue with the conference. That's kind of how I look at it.
I think that's so smart. I could have stayed with Gluten Free Frenzy, but I almost got to the point where I felt like I didn't like my boss and I was my boss. And I was
Yes,
like, oh, I
exactly.
don't like this. And so you have to, even if other people are loving it, if you're miserable, you should not keep doing it.
Right.
And maybe you weren't miserable, but maybe you're like, this has definitely had it's run its course and I'm done. Someone else can take it over. Someone else can do it. And I think that's important to go with your ebbs and flows of your energy as well. Like, there's times with blogging that I do not want to blog. And instead of
Yes.
forcing myself, I go with that ebb and flow of it's not happening this month. That's okay, and then
Right.
make up for it the next month. So
When your passions are back in
yeah.
in line.
Well, those
Yes.
passions show through in your post, in the way you write, in the way you photograph, all of those things. In the summer, I really don't like blogging. I just do not like summer recipes. But come September through February, I am gung ho and I'm so excited, and
Yes.
that's okay. Everybody just has their different things that work for them.
Right. I feel the same way. In fact, I've oftentimes said I think blogging needs to have seasons, just like a TV show has seasons. It's too much to
Yes,
do it 24/7,
it is.
every week of the year.
It is. And I actually, December, I'm such a holiday girl, which this probably doesn't surprise you with my blog, but I love the holidays and especially December. And so for years, I worked so hard in the month of December because this is the 8th year. I did the 25 days of gluten-free giveaways. And every day we featured a new brand and a new giveaway, a new recipe. Oh my goodness. It was so much work. And my December, before I knew it, it was January and I'd missed my favorite month of the year. And
Oh, yeah.
it was so sad. So a few years ago, I decided to make it the 12 days of gluten-free giveaways. And what I do now is I start in the middle of October doing my work for that so that November, come Thanksgiving, I'm done. And I'm technically like, quote, off working the month of December. I mean, I still schedule things or I'll still respond to comments or interact on
Yeah.
Instagram, but all my posts are done before December 1st because I refuse to write blog posts in my favorite month of the year.
I love that. It's like, it's
I
coming.
know it's
And so
coming.
you're prepared for it. That's
And I
perfect.
work extra hard. I mean, literally last week, my family had an entire Thanksgiving dinner because I was updating all my Thanksgiving posts. And it's been fun.
Ah.
We eat Thanksgiving at different times, and that's okay.
That's one of those fringe benefits of blogging,
It
huh?
is. I think my grocery store, they know me pretty well, and they're like, no, we don't have fresh cranberries yet. No, we don't have. And I'm like, oh man. They're like, it's only September. So,
Right. Come on, get on the,
yeah,
usually it seems like you're seeing the Christmas stuff in
yeah,
August or something.
yeah.
So come on.
Yeah. And so I think you just kind of have to go with what works for you. I have a friend who her ideal months are summer. She loves June and July. And so she does all her work so that she can completely take off blogging June and July. Do posts still go live to all her followers? Absolutely. But she's scheduled them and done the work in April and May. And so I think you kind of just have to look at your year as a blogger and say, when do I need a moment off? And that's why having help and having virtual assistants are great, because they can schedule for you. They can keep up on things for you while you can just take some time to just be with your family and the people you love during your favorite time.
But I think what you're saying makes complete sense, though, because you do need to know which months are important to you so that you can work towards that. Because the VA that you hire the first time might not be the VA that you want to continue to work with. I think you got to have huge trust there with that person.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so, yes, and they need to be trained to do it exactly the way you want it. And that way, when you're, like you say, taking June and July off or December off, you know that they're doing it with confidence.
Oh, absolutely. And I have different people for different things. I have,
Yeah.
I have a girl who helps me do Instagram, and I have a girl who helps me do all the Facebook drops, where she drops all of my pins to those pin groups or like to roundups. Roundups are great
Yes.
because building your backlinks are what's going to give you authority on Google. Thank you, Casey from MediaWise. But
That was his
that
tip.
was his tip. And do you know what? He actually told me about you. He was like, you need to talk to Marley. So, so yeah, thanks to him.
Thank you, Casey.
But I think that having those experts, because I found that my Instagram girl wouldn't be able to do that necessarily. And my Pinterest girl, that's what she specializes in. So she doesn't cross over into Facebook. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so having those people, like you said, getting to know them and figuring out, oh, you know what? They're better just on this platform.
Right. And having people do what they do best is really, best for you. How did you find these people?
Yeah. So Christy from Silently Social, I actually, where did I find her? I don't even remember. I think someone might have referred me to her a few years ago, and I used her and she was great and I saw my numbers increase, but I was like, here's a lesson to learn from Chandice. I said, oh, I just can't afford this anymore. I'm not going to do it. And I canceled with her. My Pinterest traffic plummeted. I mean, plummeted. Same to like Pinterest traffic to my website. I was like, oh my goodness. Okay, I will pay that to have that back because I make it back in ad revenue, right?
Right.
And so I brought her back on, and I've told her since, you will never, ever leave me, right? She's like, no. I'm like, good, because I'm never getting rid of you either. She just laughs and she's great. So I found her from a recommendation, which I found are usually the best is a recommendation. And then full transparency, my Facebook gal is actually my sister, and she started doing virtual assisting not very long ago. And she's been great because we've been able to work together through all of that, through the learning curves. And I know some people, it's hard to work with a sibling or work with family members, but for me, it's great because I can just text my sister. So
yes, exactly. Say, I need this done this way. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. That's great. I love that. I always think about that too, like people I might hire to help. And for me, I prefer to do like freelancers rather than people I know, because I need to be able to say what I need to be able to say. And sometimes it's not easy for me to do that with my sister or somebody like that. But that's great that you're able to do that.
Yeah, I know. Luckily, I have siblings and there have been times when we haven't necessarily seen eye to eye or gotten along, and I'd had to send a following text being like, love you, family first, you know what I mean? But as long as they know that the relationship is always family first, but this is important and this is why, that's what's helpful for us. And then if you need help with Instagram, my biggest suggestion is to find someone young who's a big fan of Instagram, because they're going to know how to do everything on there that you want. In my experience, 40 and 50-year-old Instagram virtual assistants, I don't necessarily think that they're the best qualified for that. I think a 22-year-old who's on there and knows the platform is much better.
Yes, it's its own beast, isn't it? It's really hard to figure out at times, and
It is.
yes,
It is. And I had someone help me with Instagram fully for a while. And I realized that my engagement went down because even though she was doing stuff for me and it was still my voice, I think not being engaged on stories every day on Instagram is a huge deal.
Yes, I agree with that too. There's something about posting every day that needs to also be in concert with doing stories related to those posts. I totally agree.
Definitely. Well, and it can easily be, because I'll get stubborn sometimes, be like, I'm deleting Instagram off my phone. It's just a time suck. But what I decided to do instead was on my phone, I set those time limits. I don't know if you've seen those on, smartphones, but you can actually set time limits where it locks you out after an hour. And
Nice.
you have to you can type in your code and get back on, but it kind of makes you second guess and think, should I get back on, or am I just wasting
Right.
time? And so I think
Yes.
setting those personal limits have helped me a lot be able to keep the app on my phone and engaged, but also do it within a good time frame, because I don't want to be on all day.
Yes, exactly. There's things on your list that you want to get done that are not Instagram.
Yeah, yes. Well, and speaking of that, batch working has definitely been very helpful for me as a blogger.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. How does that work for you?
Well, I feel like batch work is really great because I can make the whole kitchen a mess in one day and make 4 recipes, or, just go crazy on recipes that day. And that's my batch for that day. And by the time I'm done with those, I'm done. I don't want to do anything else, and that's okay. And then the next
Yeah.
day, I can either photograph them that day as well while I've got them, if there's something that needs to be photographed right then while it's hot. Or if it's something like cookies, then I can do photography then the next day. And Frosting and Fettuccine, Sam from Frosting and Fettuccine told me about that. She said, there's a lot of things that can wait until the next day when you're already tired from baking all day. There's things like cookies and stuff that will photograph just fine the next day. And I really liked that suggestion. So batch working has been very helpful that way. And also I took email off my phone entirely so that I am no longer tied to my email. I have to actually sit down on a computer and log on to reply and answer and see emails, because I was literally a slave to my email.
Oh, yes. I totally feel you on that one. Except now the problem for me is that sometimes my inbox gets a little out of control because there's so many emails and it's hard to weed through them all. It's just bad.
It is. Well, and the first thing I do when I get in my inbox is I delete everything that it has no priority. That helps me mentally, instead of starting at the top and working down. I'm like, there's so many, but if I delete all the ones that I know have no value, spam or whatever, what things that you've signed up for or whatever, deleting those, then it minimizes, I actually only have 11. So, okay, I can get through 11. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. There's only 11 emails that I have to worry about. Yes, you're right. There probably is like 100 that are just junk.
Yes.
Things that I've signed up for that I don't want to read right now, or yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I feel like that helps with email. And then my other favorite thing to do for batch work is at night. Well, my husband and I are such creatures of habit, but after we put the kids to bed, we sit on the couch and he's got his laptop, I've got mine, and we're working on little projects or things. And we turn on a funny show that we've seen 100 times. So that's not like we have to be laser focused, but it makes us laugh and relax. And I sit and edit for 3 hours, and I edited 10 different recipes, photos in 1 or 2 nights, so that everything's done, not just editing the actual photos that I'm going to be using, but also the step-by-step photos and creating the collages, the Pinterest image with the text overlay, everything, so that when I then have 2 days that are batch work of writing, the photography is already done, and I can just pull those because I batch worked. And then it's kind of an excuse to just sit on the couch for 2-3 hours while you edit and watch a little movie or watch a show.
Yes, I love that. Do you have a favorite show that you watch when you're doing that?
Well, my husband's favorite is The Office, but we've seen it about 5 million times. So I'm like, we have to change it up with something else every once in a while. And so we'll work in Friends in there, or that 70s show, like really old ones, but that we've seen so many times that we can literally like laugh while looking at our computer. You know what I mean?
Yes. That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
I mean, because if I were to turn on This Is Us, there's no way I'd get anything done because I'm laser focused figuring out the episode, And so it's kind of like you have to figure out what works for you. Or that's also a great time, because I'm so obsessed with the holidays. I'll turn on, Practical Magic, or again, a movie that I've seen 20 times, but it's my favorite one to watch during that holiday,
Right. It gets you in the mood, right?
Yeah. So you still feel like because I don't know about you, but as a mom and as an entrepreneur, it's very difficult for me to sit down and watch a full movie without having my hands busy either on the computer or doing laundry or something. And so
Yes.
that's an excuse to be like, oh, I'm watching my fun holiday movie while I edit photos. So
Yes. And my problem is if I don't have my hands busy doing something, then I start picking at my fingernails. It's really a bad habit.
yeah.
So yes,
Yes, it's so
there's
hard.
that.
I know. I tell my husband
Yep.
when he comes in and there's like 8 loads of laundry next to the couch, like, oh my goodness. And I'm like, listen, this is a whole movie's worth of laundry. I'm good.
Yes,
So,
exactly. And it's going to be all nice and folded afterwards.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So
So tell me, you were talking about photography. I'm just curious, when you started your blog, did you come into it with some photography skills or did you have to develop that?
no. In
Oh,
fact, one of the funny things that I've been doing as, I've been updating all my old posts is I leave an original photo at the very bottom saying, check out this gem from 2009. And it was literally taken on my flip phone or on my
oh
like
my God.
junky, not no digital camera whatsoever back in 2009.
Yes.
And it is hilarious to see how far that it's come. And so I like to
Yeah.
include that at the bottom of my posts whenever I have one, just to show people like, look how far it's come. And so, no, I had no photography skills, no camera even. And so I've everything that I've done up until now, like if you look at the photos on my blog now, it's all self-taught. So basically everything is just been learning over time or asking friends. But I did recently sign up for Broma Bakery's photography class, and it's an online class, and I'm really excited to delve into that because the look of her photography is definitely what I'd like to transition to. It's just finding the time to sit down and do it.
Oh, that's right. Exactly.
So
And I love having somebody that, you're inspired to kind of, I don't want to say like copy their style, but their style is something that you like and you like. I love how you say you're going to gravitate towards that. That's really nice.
yeah, she's definitely, I like white and bright and beautiful. And so I
Me
try to
too.
do that. Yeah. And so I try to do that, on my blog as is, but I definitely know my styling and my photography skills are limited. And so I'm looking forward to expanding those and doing even more and even better. So,
Well, it's funny because I'm kind of in this process of going back into old posts and updating, well, first of all, we are updating old posts.
mhm.
Second, sometimes I'm just taking what I have to work with and I'm just, do I need to reshoot this? Yes. But for now, I'm just going to grab that photo and it's just, put it in a pen
Yeah.
and brighten it up a little bit. But it's just amazing to me how much brighter I make almost everything brighter.
Oh, absolutely. If I have stuff that I is like really on the line of board, of needing to redo or not,
Yeah.
and there's so many to redo, so many hundreds that you're like, if it's
Oh,
on the line and
yes.
if I can just brighten it and edit it in Lightroom, then I will absolutely take that route.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
I know what's going to happen is
Yeah.
as soon as I finish her course, I'm going to be like, oh man, now I want to redo everything again. So, but I'm not going to.
I know, but I even feel that way about some that we did, like even last year.
Oh,
Like I
yep.
feel like every year I'm just wanting brighter and
I know,
brighter.
huh?
There's a limit. You have to stop somewhere, but yeah.
I know, me too. Well, and I feel like a lot of that comes down to like the styling, which that's part of it's like a course where you have different like quote classes. And one of them is on styling. And I
Yes.
really do need help with styling because my styling, do you remember back in the day when we'd scrapbook and you'd go to Pebbles in My Pocket or go to these scrapbook stores and you'd get those like, Jolie stickers and all those things. And I don't know, did you do scrapbooks?
I never did scrapbook, but I do
Okay.
know what you're talking about. I've seen it at
Yes.
Michael's, I
And
think.
so you'd like make all these photo albums that were just so over the top with stickers and you cut all your pictures apart and all this stuff. And now we're like, oh my goodness, look how ugly these albums are. But the truth is that it's just kind of the evolving, it's just part of the growth and evolving. And so I think some of it's just fine to just leave and move forward. Like for me, I've told myself once I've taken her class, I'm committing to just move forward with the things that I learn. I'm not going back and fixing them again. Once I've already updated my post as Casey's taught me to do, I am not doing it again. So,
It's true. You do have to, yeah, you have to figure out this is good
yeah.
enough,
Yeah, it is. And
right?
maybe for some of those ones that are highly visited, you're like, okay, I really want to update those photos, and that's fine. But for every single post after
Yes.
you've already redone them, just redid
Yes.
them just because you've learned more techniques or styling or photography, I think it's fine to move forward. Even some of those, amazing, look at Half Baked Harvest. Her stuff is phenomenal. And I'm sure
Oh,
I'm sure
sure.
even her, if you go back
Yeah.
and look from her very beginning photos, they probably are not the same.
Yes.
So
Right. Exactly. I totally agree. I always feel myself torn between these two areas where you don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good.
yes.
At the same time, you also recognize that as a true professional, you want to strive for perfection. So I think there's a spectrum there and you've got to find where you're comfortable at. And sometimes that may change. Like maybe on a new post, I know exactly what I'm going for. I'm going to definitely get that photo that I want. But on some of these older ones, maybe I have to be okay with this is not quite perfect, but it's pretty good.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. And I think that that's something for us to remember is that, practice makes progress, not practice makes perfect, and so just continue to realize that nothing's ever going to be perfect. And so just continue to work on progression and then that will be good enough. And I think more than anything, it's true that Google really doesn't care about how perfectly styled and perfectly photographed your stuff is. Google cares about your SEO. So
That's right. Practice makes progress. Oh my God, I love that. That's going to have to be a quote
that's
somewhere. That's really
what I tell
good.
my kids all the time. Practice makes progress, because I never ever
It's,
want them to think that it needs to be practice makes perfect. We do not need to be perfect in this life, and so progress is good enough.
yes. I love that. Well, you were talking about SEO and Google. I do think though that Google does look to, some kind of social metrics. I don't know. I mean, I think people are probably on the fence about whether this is true or not, but in my experience, it feels like a post that does really well on social will also do really well in SEO. So I
Yeah.
do think having a photo that you feel confident enough in
Yeah.
that you can share and that will get some traction is helpful.
Oh, definitely. And the more confident you are about your post and your photography, the more willing you are to share it. Like most of the stuff that I share around the holidays is recycled each year, and I maybe update or brighten or whatever the photos, but it's not like I make all of these recipes brand new every single holiday. There's no way. But I was going through my scheduling of Instagram and I was looking at some of my old Halloween recipes and I'm like, I don't even want to share that because it's such an ugly photo, And so in
Oh,
that case, you
yes.
have to look and say, okay, is this one worth updating? Can I get a good SEO term? Can I get beautiful photos, or is it really just not worth it? You know what I mean?
Right. That's a very good point. So if it's got such low search volume and, it's really hardly even worth updating. Yes, I've got a lot of posts like that.
And it's hard to say
Yes, I spend a
goodbye.
lot of time in my spreadsheet just scratching my
Yeah.
head, like, what do I do with this
Yes.
one?
And it's hard to say goodbye to posts. And so I
Yeah.
think instead of saying goodbye, you just,
Yeah.
keep them in your own personal little computer scrapbook as, oh, that was fun. Or like my mom always says, you could just make your own little cookbook for home. Like, I like this recipe, but nobody else cares about it, and neither does Google. So, or simply tweak it and make some changes so that it is more Google SEO friendly.
Right. Yes. And it's interesting that, you and I both have been through this process of getting our sites
Mhm.
reviewed for SEO. And one of the recommendations was to delete old
Yeah.
content that
Yeah.
wasn't getting any
Was that
traffic.
hard for
And
you? That was so
I
hard for
went,
me.
yes. Yes, I mean, for me, the unrelated
Yeah.
stuff was super easy. I mean, once I finally, did that, but I have found though that it's interesting that when I delete something I think is not of value, I'll get emails from people, and so I don't know. There's a part of me that's I'm hesitant, more hesitant than I have been to
Mhm.
delete old
Yeah,
content now as a
definitely. And I
result.
think if there's any way you can update it and you are willing to and you want to, then definitely go that route. But if not,
Yes,
it's hard to say
yes,
goodbye, but say goodbye, old friend, and just keep it for yourself, and
yes,
and that's just have your own little
right.
folder that's what it's for.
Right, exactly. I was going to tell you, you were talking about taking this photography course, and I was just going to say, I had Joni Simon on this podcast. She was on episode 164, and she's with the YouTube show, The Bite Shot.
Oh, okay.
And she does a lot of really great food photography tips on her shows, like styling and the shots themselves. But she really, she turned me on to this term specular highlights, which is basically the shiny stuff on the food.
Mm.
And I had never heard that term before, but once I found out, that's like, it's like I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
I knew there was something I did that I wanted in the shot. I wasn't able to name it, and therefore I couldn't quite always figure it out. But now that I know that term, it's absolutely what I'm going for. I love all the shiny stuff on the food.
Oh, absolutely. And see, and I didn't know there was a
Yeah.
specific term for it, but one of my friends, Erin from Meaningful Eats, she has this very successful blog. And she always used to tell me just those kisses of light. See that chocolate, that kiss of
Oh,
light? I'm like, oh, okay.
yes.
So I used kisses of light from her. And so I didn't know there was a
I
specific
love
term.
that.
But when you're photographing chocolate or photographing that fruit or whatever, it's that little touch of light on there that makes it, oh, it's jumping off the
Oh,
screen, you know?
yes.
So,
It's just gorgeous when you've got that, that light shining on the food. And also, Joni recommends having what she calls a fan brush. If you could go to the art store and it's a brush that kind of fans out at the end.
uh-huh.
And she recommends that because you can kind of go in between the food. And if any particles have fallen on the table or whatever, you can brush it
Oh,
off.
that's good. Yes, that's a great
So now I'm walking around like a fairy with my my little brush and highlight, saying specular
If
highlights.
only
So
people knew all the tools we have in our toolbox as bloggers and the things that we do.
yes,
I know, I know.
right.
Well, and that's the thing too, is sometimes I feel very ambitious and excited to style something and photograph it. And other times, like this morning,
Oh,
I did a really styled, beautiful shot of my turkey pot pie. But when it came to the pumpkin chocolate chip cookies that came up next to photograph, I was like, nope, I want the littlest, simplest marble, like little pedestal cake stand with a
yes,
towel and a couple other cookies on the side. Like it was basic, like a towel and a cake stand, and that's it. But it was
right.
because I just felt like I don't feel the need to overly style this one. You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
that's okay
You have
too.
to just follow that.
Yeah, you do.
Right.
Because sometimes if every single shot is overly styled, I think sometimes that can feel intimidating for the everyday person coming to check out that recipe as well.
Oh, that's a good thing to remember too, is like you want this to be relatable.
Yeah, my friend Erin actually, again from Meaningful Eats, she actually says that. She's like, you want the food to look like it actually is going to be eaten in somebody's house, not that it's just being styled and photographed, you know?
Yeah, that's so funny that you say that because I was just on Pinterest today and I saw this shirt that I liked and that ended up making me go to this. It was it's a designer
Hmm.
and Molly something. I don't remember her last name, but anyway, I love some of her stuff, but boy, some of it, it's like, who would ever wear
Yeah,
that? So I think that's kind of the same thing. Like, it's easy. We want to keep our food delicious and gorgeous, but at the same time, it's got to be relatable.
it does, because let's say you have the easiest cookie recipe in the world, but it's so overly styled and so over the top. They're like, I am never going to make this recipe. And they don't even scroll down to see what the recipe entails because they're like,
Yes.
this isn't approachable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. It's funny that you're talking about Half Baked Harvest because I think her photography could easily make you feel that way because it's just so gorgeous and beautiful. But there's enough hominess to it that I feel like she's found a nice balance.
She has, because I feel the same way. I think about that all the time, Tegan. But if you look at her behind the scenes on Instagram, if you watch her make her stuff on Instagram, she starts and she walks you through an entire recipe. And when she plates it, it looks as gorgeous as it does in her photos on Instagram stories. I'm like, how is this even possible? But it's because it's her natural talent. And
Yeah.
so for me, and I feel like for her, she's used those warm colors and those warm, what are they called? Props and styling things. So
Hmm.
yes, there may be Parmesan perfectly spread out and crusted bread next to it, and it looks so gorgeous. But at the same time, it's so warm and homey and cozy that it feels approachable.
Yes, yes, she's done a really good job. So, can you tell me when was there a time? I mean, obviously you had your other blog going and you made this decision to start the new one. Was there a time when you realized, okay, I can turn this into a business?
Yeah, definitely. Well, from the get-go, I knew that I wanted to, like, pretty soon after, I knew I wanted to work with brands. For me, it wasn't just like, because I told you I'm very ambitious and I wanted to do more. And so I was reaching out to brands early on when I was .blogspot.com, and it was like, okay, we'll send you a big package of free goodies if you'll share this. I'm like, cool. That sounds great. And that's kind of where it started. And then I started charging $100 or $200 and now it's, significantly more than that. But it was like, once you realize that you're good at it and that you're good at working with brands and you're good at, and I love incorporating brands' products into my recipes. That's a very fun and exciting thing for me. It's a challenge and I love doing that. And I do try to keep my sponsored work at a minimum, 30-70, no more than 30% a month. But that was seeing the success of that and the brand's excitement and my readers saying, hey, I never thought of using those gluten-free cookies in a crust, like in a no-bake cheesecake crust. That's a great idea. And so things like that made me excited to move forward and say, hey, this can be a business because I can work with brands on sponsored work. And then also then the traffic starts coming and you can monetize through, your ad network.
Right, exactly. So that was, did you see that model somewhere, or you feel like that was something that just came to you? You wanted to do that?
Yeah, definitely. I just wanted to work with brands and I had no idea. I mean, literally the first time I charged was like $50. It was like $50 and I'll include it in my blog post, which you should see those photos and those blog posts. So definitely only worth $50. But, and that's fine because then you evolve over time. And some of those brands that I worked with 10 years ago, I'm still working with now.
Wow.
And it's been fun for them also to see the evolution and to see how far it's come. And then people, the readers are like, hey, you used this for the last 12 years. I know you love it, And so they kind of stuck with me. I stuck with them. It's been good.
I love that. So you don't have to go into specific numbers, but what would you say the ratio is of, I imagine that ad revenue is probably part of what you're doing. And also then you've got the sponsored post. Would you say it's like 50-50 or different than that?
No, not for me yet. I wish it was, but for me, the sponsored work still outweighs the ad revenue, just because I still have growth to happen. And that's why I hired Casey, is because Pinterest loves me, but Google not so much. And so I was like, man, what am I doing wrong? He's like, well, let me show you. Let me tell you.
Here's 40 pages telling you what you're doing wrong.
Yes. And so I'm hopeful, and it is happening. Like I said, since I've worked with Casey, it's up 20% in my Google traffic alone. And so I know that will continue to increase, but Google still does not love me. And so most of my traffic, more than half of my traffic, comes from Pinterest. Like, it's just Pinterest likes what I do. And so the ad network money is probably a third of what it's like 2/3 sponsored money and then a third ad revenue. Mm-hmm.
Right. So, but your goal is to make it probably more like 50-50.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, it might even be a little less than that. I would say my sponsored work is definitely significantly more than my ad revenue right now.
Right.
But I've also known my value. I don't take just like the site views and things like that. I mean, we have a decent amount, but I don't just take that and say, okay, well, I'm only worth $400 a post. No, I charge $900 because I know my value. I know that this is going to be a beautiful post that has wonderful writing and photography and a yummy recipe that people will love. And so the other person over there who probably has triple my traffic may charge the same thing, but we both know our value,
I love it.
Yeah. So I think that that's been helpful in that I charge more, but it's because my friend Michelle from My Gluten-Free Kitchen said this to me once: wouldn't you rather have to do half the work for the same amount of money? I'm like, yes, that's so smart. So instead of doing 5 sponsored posts a month for X number of dollars, I get to do 2 for the same number. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So knowing your value is very important.
Oh, it's so true. And I think it is really hard, especially when you're pitching brands to feel that confidence that you need.
It is. Well, and if you're charging what you should charge for yourself, you're only going to get 1 out of 10 yeses. So for every 10 people you pitch, probably only 1 will say yes if you're charging what you should be. When you get lots of yeses, you need to up your prices.
Yes. Another thing I have learned, well, and you probably are really good at negotiating, but it's about the art of saying no, because I get a lot of outreach from brands and they're just, it's crazy the kinds of things they ask of people for so little money.
Yeah. Yeah, when they're like, can we just send you a box of our products for you to do?
Yeah.
No. Thank you so much for thinking. And I try to be very tactful, and I'll say, I actually just had that 2 days ago and just said, oh, your products look wonderful. And I think it would be really great to collaborate on this project because I like what you do. And I think it'd be great. However, this is what I charge. And she told me ahead of time, our budget is smaller. And I said, this is what I charge a regular rate.
Yeah.
What can you do within that budget? Like what would work for you? And then what I've found is that, like, for example, maybe they have to pay 25% less. So I pull off one of those. Instead of 2 Facebook mentions, there's 1. Or instead of, it's very complicated recipe, it's a 4-step recipe.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And so different ways to make it work, because I don't always want to be just about the money either. If it's a brand I believe in and I trust, I absolutely want to work with them. And that's what stories is for, I feel like, too. Instagram stories is a great place to be like, this product is so wonderful.
Right.
But maybe they don't have the budget to do a recipe right now, but it's genuinely something I buy regularly, then I'll share it.
I mean, that is another thing I sometimes will do is I'll pitch to them like, hey, well, let's do an Instagram post or let's do this. So that's a great way of going about it.
Yes, definitely. And I reserve stories for that. I'm
Yes.
still pretty stingy with the Instagram posts because I want them to be so beautiful and pretty. But
Yes.
if there's a way to still do that, then that's so great. I feel like Instagram stories are so easy and they almost have more reach than the posts. And so that's a great alternative for brands,
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can still point to them and everything. So it's great.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm just curious, now that you've been through this SEO and you're really trying to focus on that more with your posts, I'm curious, how has that changed the way you go about posting new posts? I know we all know that there's a lot of updating old content, but let's talk about a new post for a minute.
The first thing I do is take my idea and say, is this even viable on Google? And I'll go over to SEMrush and be like, no, or yes. And so, one post I joke about is that I like pretentious food, but that's one thing I love about Tegan too. A lot of her food is pretentious, but she finds a way to make it work too. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
And that's not a bad thing. I don't think pretentious is a bad thing. I love pretentious food. I love lavender infused cocktail or mocktail or a lavender infused. And so I did this lavender infused instant pot creme brulee. Do you know how many people search that? None. And so what did I do when I updated the post? Changed it to instant pot creme brulee, took out the lavender and went ahead. Was it still lavender? Yes. But what I did was I just let them know, if this is an option to make it lavender, if you don't, go ahead and just switch it out for vanilla bean. That works just fine. And so that is what instead of, with new posts now, I just go into SEMrush and say, okay, I have this idea. Can I work it where it works for Google, like they'll love it and it's being searched, but at the same time, it doesn't lose its integrity of Chandice. Like, okay, I love the infusion of lavender here. So what I'll do is do a subheading of, hey, here's a great way to add lavender to this dish. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's kind of the first step, is 100% seeing if it's going to work for, like, literally SEO research is number 1.
In other words, is anybody searching for this?
Right. Don't even start the recipe until you've searched the SEO term that you're hoping to get for this.
Yes. And how competitive is it, right? Yes.
Oh, yes. Because that's the other thing, is if you don't have the domain authority, why go after something that has 40,000 searches,
Right.
And so SEO research is the number 1 thing that I do now. And then from there, that helps me when I get in the kitchen as I'm developing the recipe and as I'm photographing the recipe. I'm not going to do every photograph that features lavender because it's not a 100% lavender based SEO term now. Mm-hmm. And so I would just show here's a great alternative. And it would only be one photo where the hero image and the main images are going to be a traditional creme brulee, with some vanilla bean or something like that.
Right. That makes so much sense. Right. So in other words, keyword research is kind of a big part of what you're doing.
100%. The other thing I like to do is kind of on my calendar, make a list of a few things that I'd like to make in the next month, because when I hit up my local, TJ Maxx or Home Goods, I kind of want to have a list. Otherwise, I'm just going to go in there and buy a bunch of stuff that really doesn't fit with how I'm going to style these recipes anyway. And I'm like, man, I still have some things that have been sitting in there waiting to be styled with, but it hasn't fit. You know what I mean? And I think, what a waste of money. Why did I buy that? And so now it's better to go into the stores like that with a list of, these are the 4 recipes. Ooh, this wood bowl would work perfect for that salad, or this would work great for that. I feel like that saved me a lot of money.
Money on props.
Yes, money on props.
Yeah. I love that. So if you were talking to somebody today and they were brand new and they were thinking about starting a food blog, what advice would you give them?
Oh, I would tell them to really think about what it is that they're hoping to share. What's your passion? Like, what are you wanting to share? And then I would have them create an avatar. Who is it that you're now talking to? Okay, this is what your passion is and what you love. Now, who is that? Who is that avatar out in the world? Is that another mom like you who's in her 30s? Who is that? What's their economic situation? What's their, all of those things, so that then when you go to write posts or when you go to put your site together, you have an avatar of who you're writing to. So definitely, I think that's helpful in the beginning.
Oh, that's great advice. I love that. Okay, I have these fun questions I'd like to ask at the end of the interview. Are you game?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay. So I think you're going to love this question. So tell me about your favorite food.
Well, so I'm kind of funny because, like I said, I love pretentious food. So my favorite food is like buttered scallops with sea salt. I love scallops. But then on the flip side, my friends would always joke when we were, but when we just got married before we had kids and stuff, that you are like a frat boy. You love frat food. And so, like chili cheese Fritos or like French fries dipped in ranch. I like things like that. So it's very like flip side, but I'm definitely a savory girl. I do not love sweets. In fact, the sweets that I love are very lightly sweet, like a very lightly sweet creme brulee or like a tiramisu that hardly has any sweet in it.
Really? That's interesting. Do your recipes on the site reflect that too?
I think it's half and half because dessert recipes do well. And so you create them because people love them, and I'll still eat them.
Yes.
I wouldn't put up something that I didn't like, but I would always take savory over sweet. Like 100%, I'll take French fries over cookies any day.
Oh, I love French fries
Yeah.
too. They're just the heavenly
They
food.
are.
I actually credit food blogging as kind of saving me from that, because I was always into sweets. My mom said I had such a sweet tooth, and so then I'm around food all the time, and I felt kind of like a victim to
Yeah.
it. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what's happened, but I'm kind of in the same boat with you, that I love baking, and I love baking things for other people. I don't necessarily have the need to eat it. I
Yeah.
have a bite or two.
Yes.
But this is just like, who am I? Because I'm the kind of person, like, I could not cohabitate with Oreos. I would be
What's
like
happening?
in there eating them
Yeah.
all. And now all of a sudden, it's like, I have no problem.
Oh, absolutely. That's been a new thing that has only recently happened to me, is that I've started adopting intuitive eating, because for years, starting at age 12, I did a diet, and
Me too. Yeah.
yeah, and so it messes up. You should definitely look at this book called Intuitive Eating.
Okay.
But when you diet from a young age, it messes with your mind about food. Like food
Yes.
becomes, like you said, you're a slave to food, and you think about food, and you like can't stop. And so,
When am I going to eat next?
yes,
Yeah.
what am I going to eat next? And people are talking to you at the dinner table, and you're like, are you going to finish that? Like, what is like? Or you're thinking about what am I
Yes.
going to order for dessert? Or
Yes.
and so I've been really working hard on my personal relationship with food. And as I've done that,
Me too.
I'm so glad. We
Mhm.
definitely, we'll have to
Yes.
continue that conversation, because that's been a
Yeah.
definite challenge, especially for
Oh,
women. And I know
me too.
for me, I'm glad to hear that I'm not alone and that this is something you're working on too. But it's,
Oh, please, people, when I was a toddler, I think people were talking about my weight. I think because my sisters were just these naturally skinny people,
mhm,
that I have my brother too, but they were these naturally skinny kids, and I was just, I mean, when I look back on pictures of myself, I wasn't that
right,
bad. It's just, I wasn't,
right.
stick skinny.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of does something to your psyche when you
It does.
place
Yes.
food in this category. And so that been working really hard on, what does my body want? And almost always it wants vegetables. Like always, if I get down to business and think about it rather than just being a slave to
Yep.
cravings, it almost always wants
It's true.
vegetables. And so I've been trying to listen to that. And will I still have treats? Yes, I'm not eliminating anything, which is the first time in my life that I have not eliminated a category. Well, besides gluten, because I have celiac disease, but
Yes.
and it feels really good. And like you said, when I get in the kitchen to make all these recipes and people will ask, how do you like not eat the whole thing? And I'm like, well, because nothing's off limits now. I can have whatever I want. I can have a bite of that pot pie. I can have
Right.
a cookie or whatever.
Yes.
But because I'm trying to do intuitive eating, it's almost like I'm baking. Like this morning, I baked that pot pie and I made the cookies, but I was looking forward to my lunch where I was going to have a little bit of pot pie, but I was also going to have a big salad next to it. You know what I mean? And so
Yes.
I feel the same with you when I get in the kitchen. It's so fun to bake and do these recipes, but it's so much more fulfilling to like take it to somebody else that you like enjoy it for yourself, let your family have it,
Yeah.
but you don't need to eat the whole batch
Right.
of cookies, you know?
And the confidence that comes from that when you realize that you can be around this and not eat it is just amazing.
It is. And it's not, for me, it's not that I would not eat it. I'll still have some. It's just that I
Sure.
don't need
Oh
to
yeah.
have all, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Because
But
before,
stopping
yes.
one of my hardest things. Like once I had one, I had to have everything.
Yeah, but I agree with you because that's exactly what I was. And I think once you start changing the mentality you learn trust with yourself again. Like, I'm not going to take this
Yes.
away from you again. I promise. So it's here for you if you
Right.
want it. But
Yes.
let's think about, do we want 4 more cookies or would we rather have some other things, you know? And
Right,
so
exactly.
that's been
For
huge.
me, the answer was intermittent fasting. That's really helped
Yeah.
me. And I think I like to say food is like noise, and I could not hear my body. I
Yeah.
couldn't hear what I needed. And so, because I was eating all the
Hmm.
time. So now I was also hungry
Yeah.
all the time too. And so that's kind of all gone away. And I have my windows and that I eat what I want within those windows. And then it's like close it. And I don't know, it works really well for me.
I agree. I think that's a really good thing. And they've done a lot of studies showing that at nighttime, your body needs to like, your sleep can be affected, and sleep is the most important thing for your body. And when you
Absolutely.
have eaten right before bed, it digests for the next 4 or 5 hours. And so your sleep is bad and it's interrupted. Then you wake
Yes.
up the next day hungry again and cortisol levels sky high. And so I agree with you. I feel like, and not that like, if I've told it's after 7 o'clock and I'm like, I'm starving, I'll find something to have a snack, but then it's not, again, not like a diet where I'm 100%, you can never have anything that you want if you,
Yes,
but
I
I
agree.
agree with you that intermittent fasting, that, deciding on a time like, okay, 8 o'clock we're done. And then we're going to get up at 7:30, 8 o'clock,
Yeah,
and we're going to have breakfast and it's going to be great.
right. It's all
Yeah,
good.
your body
Yes.
just seems to thrive on that. I totally agree. And I'm pregnant actually we got a
Oh,
very fun surprise that we're expecting our 5th baby.
oh my goodness.
Thank
Congratulations.
you. We're super excited. It's a little boy, so we're excited to meet him. But it's funny because this pregnancy, I'm almost 35 and my eating is for the first time in my life, different than it's been, where you're not a slave to food. And I feel better this pregnancy than I've ever felt because I'm doing all those things that are good for both of us. Even he needs to have time in the night to rest when I am not eating to just sleep, you know?
Right, exactly. That's one thing I did love about being pregnant. I could just eat whatever I wanted, and I didn't gain very much weight when I was pregnant, so that
Oh,
was
I
nice.
gained so much, but it's funny. I gained so much, but it's funny because this pregnancy, I feel like I've actually like not gained quite as much.
Oh, that's
Maybe,
nice.
maybe I have,
Yeah.
but I feel better. So who cares, right?
Who cares? That's
I'm,
exactly right. I don't even get on my scale.
no, I actually don't. I threw out the scale and I told them at the doctor's office, I'm like, don't tell me unless there's a problem. Because for me,
Yes.
I'm trying to work on just being healthy in a relationship with food where it's not good or bad. It's just food,
Yes.
you know?
I actually turn around when I get on the scale. I don't face the scale. I face away from the scale.
Oh,
I
that's
say, I don't
smart.
want to know.
Yes,
I
that's
know.
so smart. It's so smart. Well, and I
Yeah.
think if you have those, you know, tendencies towards food the way that we have, because we've been dieting for so long,
Yes.
it's better to not
Yeah.
like put a number on the
Yes.
scale. So,
I agree. It doesn't help me.
no.
So why go
Yep,
there?
I agree too.
Okay. We're in this list of questions and we just got so carried away with that one, which was a
That's
good one
good.
though.
Now we've connected.
Yeah, that's right. What's the favorite app on your phone?
Oh, my favorite app. Well, I really love Audible because my favorite apps have nothing to do with blogging. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect. Yes.
I love Audible because I pay for the membership where I get a book every month. And
Oh, that's so
yeah, well, and
nice.
committing to that encourages me to listen to a book every month. I've had people be like, when do you have time to read a book? And I still have paper books that I read too. Or like an Audible book, but it forces me to commit to doing that. One book a month is good for your soul, you know?
I think so too.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it's not always self-help. My friend's like, there's not enough time to not read something that's a fiction book. And I'm like, oh, a fiction is good for your soul. It's good. Like I like reading a fiction book where I can just dream and have fun. So Audible. And then for me personally, I'm Christian, so I really like my, being able to study on my app for, the scriptures. So that's nice.
Did you also mention something about a timer app that you have? Or?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's actually just in settings. I use in settings, if you go to screen time on an iPhone, you can limit your screen time and show, like I have downtime. So from 11 p.m. to 9 a.m., because my kids go to school at 9 a.m., it's downtime and you literally have to type in your code to do anything between those hours.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, it's been really good. And then app limits, and you can set time limits, all kinds of things like that, so that I keep productive throughout the day, because the most important thing for me is to be present for the people that I love. But at the same time, I also have ambitions and goals with my own personal, desire, like dreams. And so, yeah. And and it's been good for my kids to see that. It's so great for me when I hear my kids be like, my mom's a recipe developer. I love hearing that, because you can see the pride in their voice too.
Yes, exactly. I love that. Okay. Do you have any time for TV or reading? We've just talked about that, but if you do, what's your favorite?
Well, I love This Is Us, but that's like a new one, because I was a huge fan of Parenthood. Do you remember that show back in the day, or no?
I did not watch it, but I've heard a lot of good things about it.
Yeah. So I was a huge fan of Parenthood. So when This Is Us came, I was like, yay, it's kind of just like another one. So I was happy about that. But my husband and I both really love comedy. So we'll just watch like old, early 2000 comedies. And then I personally love watching Blue Bloods, because I'm a big Tom Selleck fan. And so that's like, I love the comedy, and that's so fun, but I also really enjoy I don't like any of the others though. I don't like Law and Order or CSI or anything like that. I only like Blue Bloods, because it's like a family dynamic, and in every episode they do a family dinner around the table. So this is embarrassing, I actually ordered Bridget Moynihan's Blue Bloods cookbook.
Was it good?
It's good, because it's like, it has fun stories about Tom Selleck and his wife and like the producers of the show. It's fun. So if you like a show, if they have a cookbook, you should definitely get it.
That sounds great. So how can people find you online?
So they can visit us on our website, which is This Vivacious Life, and on Instagram and Pinterest, I'm just Chandice Probst. And the reason I did that is because when I rebranded, I was like, it is so much work to rebrand. And most people know I'm one of the only Chandices they know. So on Instagram and Pinterest, we're Chandice Probst. And on the blog and on Facebook, we're This Vivacious Life.
I love it. Chandice, I've had a great time talking with you today. Thanks for giving me your time.
Thank you so much, Marley. I really appreciate you having me. And now we have so many more things to chat about off the podcast.
Absolutely. I love it. Thanks to Chandice Probst for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. Don't miss a future episode. Sign up today for the Chopped Podcast newsletter. Just go to chopped.academy and scroll down to the bottom of the page. Thank you to everyone for your support of the Chopped Podcast. I've heard from so many of you, just like Christina of thevegiechick.com, that this podcast is making a difference. I love hearing from you, and it always makes my day. You can make a difference for this show by leaving a review on iTunes. It takes a little bit of your time, but makes a huge impact. Hey, if you're loving today's episode, take a selfie and share it with me using #NamelyMarley or #ChopPodcast on Instagram. I love hearing from you. You inspire me, and I hope today's show was helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.